The world isn't meant to be a place of justice and eternal harmony. At least not according to the Quran. The purpose of this world is to test us.
Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet?
The question is, what are we going to do in response? That's what actually matters. I come from a family of refugees. I was born in the States, in Virginia, but my parents both escaped the war in Vietnam. They both left Saigon as it fell, and so I was born and raised in Virginia, down in Richmond. Some of my earliest memories are at a Vietnamese Catholic church. We were a Vietnamese Catholic family, and it was just part of the fabric of every day. But in college, I had this opportunity to take an elective class. And I see a course called Islam in the Classical Age. That sounds absolutely fascinating to me. And I decided to sign up for it. And in the first week or two, something clicked, right? That religion mattered, that I had overlooked it my entire life. And that's when I decided, well, I need to major in religious studies. But it also kind of triggered my own journey, my own kind of moment of self-reflection that I'm Christian, I've been raised Catholic. What does that actually mean? Because here's this religion, Islam, that I'm studying, which is really inspiring and seems to present a worldview that is both hauntingly familiar but quite different. And I wanted to get a sense of, well, who am I? What does it mean to be a Catholic Vietnamese American? And so I used that religious studies major to continue studying Islam, but also studying my own faith at the time. I think there is a bit of an important pivot point. I was very fortunate to get into the Harvard Divinity School. It was the third day of orientation, and we're all gathered, and the dean of students is there to greet us. But there's a moment. Somebody walks in, a staff member, whispers something into the dean's ear, and all of a sudden, I could tell something was up.
Well, quite simply, as we begin our 11 o'clock edition of Eyewitness News, the unthinkable happened today. The World Trade Center, both towers, gone, and we are all witnesses to it, and to some degree, we are all victims.
And here I am, right, in a student lounge, and then in a dorm room, watching the towers fall. And the whole time I'm thinking, listening to the media narratives that this is going to affect Muslims. People will have stereotypes about who you are as an Asian American. I had a whole lifetime of experience to tell me that. So I knew the prevailing narrative out there in the media that was trying to demonize Muslims wasn't true. And I spent that fall wrestling with questions of what am I called to do? Why am I so invested in becoming a scholar, a professor of Islamic studies? It can't just be for satiating my philosophical questions. Alongside that, during that very tumultuous moment, I was meeting Muslims who were also there to pursue their masters. I'm this kind of oddball, like who's this non-Muslim guy who's interested in Islam at a divinity school. I took that step and introduced myself to this circle of Muslim students, said, can I hang out with you? And that was very key. All of a sudden, I had a community. And it was this experience of being in community with Muslims that I think that was a deep motivator, right, for rethinking, well, maybe my choice in faith isn't about answering those most complex questions. Maybe it's about just living it, being a person of faith in the everyday. And so it was really the spring after 9/11 that I became Muslim. When I started doing my work, I received a lot of critique and pushback. What are you doing? Theology is a Christian endeavor. And I would counter that, no, theology does exist in Islam, but we have a very particular understanding of it, which is why I think many Muslims and non-Muslims think theology doesn't exist in the same way within the Muslim community. And the way it exists historically is that it is a deeply scholastic endeavor. It's highly rationalistic. It's trying to prove the nature of existence in the world and prophecy and the divine through these highly sophisticated, deeply reasoned arguments. And while that is of utmost importance, for the average Muslim, it seems at an arm's length. It seems beyond the everyday. And I'm trying to bring theology back home.
How's the day been?
Hey, how are you guys? Sorry we're late.
I'm trying to bring theology back to our lived experiences because I think as Muslims in the world, we're faced with all sorts of challenges. And so the way I see theology is that God's ever present. God's in the world. God's revelation is always speaking to us. And with God addressing us in every moment of our lives, I can't help but ask, right? What are we doing in response? That's what theology is to me. It's our human response to what God has laid out for us. And so I want theology just to be a consciousness for the average Muslim to think, what am I doing? Who am I doing it for? And how am I doing it? And I think the most important figure in the way I think and do theology at the moment, at least, is Malcolm X. Most Muslims and non-Muslims don't think of Malcolm X as a theologian. Sometimes they don't even think of him as a Muslim properly, right? He represents something else. And yet, to me, Malcolm X is a deeply Muslim person. He's a theologian in his own right. He's trying to make sense of how the call to justice integrates with his own sense of being called by God.
Are you still a Muslim yourself?
Oh yes, I'm a Muslim. I believe in the religion of Islam, which believes in brotherhood, complete brotherhood of all people.
He's an abiding presence in my thinking, in the way I live my life of faith, because the problems he was addressing haven't gone away.
Hands up, don't shoot! Hands up!
And so I've spent a lot of time thinking about how to make theology accessible, how to make theology feel like it's relevant and something worth taking up. And I think for me, the prophets represent being faithful in the world, attending to those in need, attending to those who cannot speak, attending to those who are marginalized. And the prophets, and there are many, and they all did different things, but they're all kind of trying to assert not just faith, but a standard of justice, a standard of righteousness in the world. And so I think for theology to move forward, we have to constantly question ourselves, where's the prophetic needed? If the prophets were here today, where would their concern be? For whom would they stand? And so for me, theology needs to address modern structural racism. How can we as faithful and righteous Muslims understand this dilemma of structural racism? And then paired with that, mass displacement, losing a home and having to find it somewhere else. An element that I see in my own family story, this is the fate of an increasing number of people today, Muslims and otherwise. And so I want to be able to say that Islam provides pathways of both understanding these things, but also ethically responding to these dilemmas. That what the prophets did in the past provide us with a model of how to address these things now.
In Surah Nisa, God proclaims, "O you who believe, be steadfast, maintainers of justice."
So on the one hand, I'm studying the tradition of Islam. It's almost academic. I'm studying the history of it, the classical texts, the major figures and thinkers that have made Islam what it is over 14 centuries. And yet, tradition in Islam is really the collective history of how we as a community have understood God's revelation. It's us struggling to make sense of what He's disclosing to us. I don't think theology today within the Muslim community is going to grow unless we have a whole chorus of voices. And it can be cacophonous. I'm not looking to create a school of thought. What I want is a rich and vibrant conversation. How do we do that? How do we make it transformative for our current moment? How do we make the message that God has disclosed and is continually disclosing to us relevant for the next to come? In some ways I feel that all of this work, this investment in theology isn't for me. I think I benefit immensely, right, from just reflecting on the life of faith, but it's really for my daughter. It's really for the generation to come. It's the desire to have a community of voices. Because I want that next generation, to which my daughter will belong, to have a spectrum of choices to draw upon. That faith is not going to look one way. And I want her to be able to have a path forward. Yeah. Theology is, or should be, a species of poetry, which read quickly or encountered in a hubbub of noise makes no sense. You have to open yourself to a poem with a quiet, receptive mind, in the same way as you might listen to a difficult piece of music. You have to give it your full attention, wait patiently upon it, and make an empty space for it in your mind. And finally, the work declares itself to you, steals deeply into the interstices of your being, line by line, note by note, phrase by phrase, until it becomes part of you forever.